Alright, so now let's talk about connecting to a replica set in the Node.js driver. So just to recap, a replica set is a collection of multiple MongoDB nodes that communicate with each other and try to keep a most up-to-date copy of the entire dataset as they possibly can. They should be as close to duplicates as possible, meant for high availability and automatic failover. So the way you deal with this in an application is through the driver. And actually the driver is going to do a lot of the work for you in terms of managing the connections and keeping track of which nodes are up and which node is the primary. So for this lesson we'll cover how to start a connection to a replica set in the Node.js driver. So the way you start a connection is you actually give the driver a connection string, just like before, with the host names and ports of the nodes that you want to connect to. So in this case, we could give host names and ports of all three nodes. You can actually give them in a comma-separated list, or you could just give the host name and port of a single node, and the driver would automatically detect that it's a replica set and discover the rest of the nodes. So let's just take a quick look at an example of how this will work in a real application. So before we start, we need to start our three-node replica set. So here I'm going to start my first replica set node. I'm going to give it the port 30001, db path data db rs1. So that one's started. So let's start our next node. I'm going to start this one on port 30002, still on localhost. Give it a different data path. And finally, we'll start our third node of our replica set. Give it port 30003, the db path different from the other two. Alright. So before we can actually connect, we need to configure our replica set. So let's connect to localhost 30001, and you see we aren't actually a replica set yet. We try rs.status, we get an error. So let's run rs.initiate to actually start our replica set. Alright, so we're starting up our new replica set. The next thing we want to do is actually add the other two nodes. This is just sort of a recap of the other lessons, but just want to go over it one more time. So I happen to know that the host name is education.local and the port is 30002 of the first node. And then for the next one, the port is 30003, same host name. So now we've added all our nodes to our replica set. If we clear this, look at rs.status, we can see that we have all of our nodes connected. We have our primary, and we have the two secondaries starting up. Alright, so we've started our replica set. Now let's take a look at the application that we're going to use to connect to our replica set using the Node.js driver. So this may look familiar. We still use our Mongo client. We're still using the same functions. The only real difference here is that instead of giving a single hostname and port, we're actually giving a comma-separated list. I'm using this plus operator to concatenate the strings just so we don't have one long string wrapping around. The window is a little too small. But basically all I'm doing is passing a single connection string to the connect function, giving it a callback exactly the same way as I did with a single node, and I'm just giving this comma-separated list of replica set members instead. Note that I could also just give one member and it would still be able to connect, assuming that member was up. If that member was not up, then it would not be able to find the rest. So down here, we're using this DB object just like we did with the single node, connecting the REPL connection, inserting a document, and down here we're connecting to the REPL collection, and we're finding one document, and we should find the document that we just inserted. Then we're logging the document and closing the database. So let's just run this example. Alright, so we just ran our example, and you can see that we've inserted our document, and we found it successfully, and this was all connected to a replica set. So what actually happened here is that we gave it the connection string with the three replica set nodes. The driver automatically connected, figured out which one was the primary, figured out what the secondaries were, got the status of everything, figured out exactly where to send our write and our read, and all of that happened behind the scenes so that our application didn't have to have any of the logic of dealing with all the complexity of the added connections. So that's how you connect to a replica set in Node.js. Alright, so this is the quiz for connecting to a replica set from the Node.js driver. The question is, if you leave a replica set node out of the seed list within the driver, what will happen? Is it the missing node will not be used by the application? Is it the missing node will be discovered as long as you list at least one valid node? Is it the missing node will be used for reads but not for writes? Or is it the missing node will be used for writes but not for reads?